Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie review, wrapping up the Shyamalan universe. One of my, third favorite, technically third favorite of the Shyamalan uh, filmography. Uh, I reviewed Unbreakable, Split. Now I'm doing Glass. If you want to hear my thoughts on the previous Shyamalan movies, you can go to youtube.com/talkativecarl and check those out on my thoughts on the subject. And now we'll be wrapping it up today with Glass. And I know a lot of people had their opinions about Glass when it came out. I still enjoy this movie despite, you know, I know what happened in the third act, and like I agree with a lot of people's assessment. That part, the critical part, sucked. Not the entire third act, but just the critical part. But we'll get to that. But I still thoroughly enjoyed it. It's something I've been looking forward to since Split, and literally no joke. Outside of the MCU, certain films in the MCU, this movie had me literally clapping. More so because of James McAvoy's performance as Kevin Crumb and all of his 24 technically personalities. Uh, but man, he's great. I love James McAvoy. He's awesome in this. Outside Professor X, this is my favorite portrayal he's done out of his filmography. But uh, the movie begins with uh, Kevin or the Horde kidnapping a group of cheerleaders, four cheerleaders in this warehouse, and then the same beat for beat from what he did with Casey, played by Anya Taylor Joy, and the two other girls that unfortunately died in Split, and Casey being the only survivor. Uh, they was brought in for the sacrifice to the beast. Then we move on to what David done, what he's been doing, and apparently since the events of Unbreakable, him and his son, who what's the guy's name who reprises his role, Spencer Treat Clark, reprises his role as David Dunn's son. Uh, he's older, and you can tell like that's definitely the same kid. It's the same face and everything like that. He's just like a little bit more muscular and older now. They obviously David has stopped working security at the uh, Philadelphia, what was it, baseball stadium, I think it was. He stopped working there, and now him and his son runs a security, not a firm, but it's kind of like this it's kind of like the same kind of shop you will see if you go to like a shop on the street for like phones and what have you, like a phone store. Is about like that kind of surroundings, but for security, like for security equipment and everything like that. That's what they do. But on the side, in the back, they monitor. It's kind of like their pseudo Batcave, you know. Uh, uh, what is his son's name? Joseph. I don't know why I'm blanking on Joseph. Joseph is pretty much like David's Oracle or Batgirl, just the man behind the chair. He, they set up like patrolling areas. They, stop muggings and everything like that. There was like, two punks at the beginning of this movie who like knocked down this old dude. So David tracks him down and like pretty much beats him up. Which, if you've seen like the opening, you'll understand why. Because those two are just pricks. But then the people who caught glimpses of David wearing that same poncho and everything like that gave him like the name Overseer, which hearing that, like I don't know, as a black person, like hearing like someone named Overseer is a little daunting, but you know, eh, it's what it is. It's whatever. But that is something that I just like. It's just like something that's like, I don't know. It's a little nitpick. It's not like a huge deal. It's like, not everything has to be about anything. But yeah, he's pretty much patrolling his neighborhood in Philadelphia and stopping like muggings and rapes and all the other stuff superhero would do, like just like the more mundane stuff, like you see them stopping robberies and what have you. And uh you also get to eventually, I'm trying to remember like the scene next over, but oh yeah, Joseph does some research about like the missing girls, and the next day David does the just looking over, like scouting the area, and then he bumps into Kevin, who is being like one of the Horde members, the personality Hedwig, who after before this moment was talking with the cheerleaders, like playing around with his skates, you know, let them know like uh they're about to be like just let them know that they're there for like a glorious sacrifice, because they haven't known suffering from the events of the split. The Horde's mentality, at least some of the Horde's mentality, like Patricia and Hedwig, uh, they're in the mindset of, if you haven't known suffering or haven't been broken in their minds, then you are unpure. It's the broken who will rise up in a revolution to, bring the world to this next stage kind of situation. Very Magneto. And there's a lot of comic book, references and everything like that. You've seen a couple of times, at least a few times, different characters going to this very singled out comic book shop that they all in separate scenes go to the same comic shop. Now that I'm thinking about it, it is kind of a coincidence. Like there's no other comic shop any one of them could have gone to aside for that particular one. Thought that was kind of strange, but scenes, you don't have to break anybody's wallet to go shoot a scene at a different comic book shop if you just got the one. But then as because as the Hedwig passing by David, as he's have his headphones on, he brushes past him. Then David, using his premonition skills, his spider sense in a sense, sees the Horde's crime and knows he found his guy after they triangulated the Horde's essentially feeding grounds, because it's like you see in a lot of like crime detective shows, where it's like you got like different points, and usually at the center is where you find like the focal point where like they probably would be living. But Joseph, was a nice clever thing where it's like didn't fall, do the same thing like you see in a lot of crime dramas. Like it's a possibility that they use that area as their attack area, while the home base is like a few miles further south. So that way, smartly, they can easily claim they haven't been there, kind of situation. It's like don't crap where you eat kind of situation. I enjoyed the next part where it's like, hey, they found these girls, you rescue them, then they all see the the nice meetup, because it's like when I was in the theater, I was like gearing up. I'm like, okay, here we go. These two people are finally about to meet. It's like kind of low rent Marvel movie, but it's still pretty good. you see like the Beast, who changed later, came back crawling on the pipe on the ceiling, and these two finally go head to head. They sit there knocking each other into columns in this warehouse, cracking it, showing each other's strength. Then, they both got knocked out the window, and then lo and behold, they got they're surrounded by all these different officers, these tactical these people in tactical gear. They flashen the lights just to get the Beast to force the Beast to give up the light to move to a different altar. And we get Barry, and it's like great performance all around from James McAvoy. I was like, what is this? I'm Barry. Like, well, where are we? Like, we're not the Horde. Like, we're not in league with the Beast. It's like, and then this lady played by about to say Parker Posey, but that's not it. Sarah Paulson, who plays Dr. Staple, comic book, that kind of thing. And everybody pointed that out. I don't think I put that together when I first saw this in the theater. It's like long after people already reviewed this and they pointed that out, and then it's kind of obvious. And I gotta say, like, they play with colors in this movie very well. Because David, earthly green, a lot of the stuff he wears is usually earthly green, even the poncho. You see in the posters too. You got the Horde, Kevin, and the Beast. Their attire is usually some kind of somebody pointing out more like priestly kind of robes, because getting the Horde thinks he's like a avenging angel, so they put him in very like yellow, like a base kind of yellow kind of outfits, usually associated with like priestlyhood kind of situation. They're the Beast is there to save the Unbroken, so you got to put them in like some kind of priestly kind of color, so like these kind of yellow tones to him, while Dr. Stable all white, just plain. And it further explains her deeper role later on in the movie. We'll get to that. But then you got Elijah, played by Sam Jackson, usually is in purple, is more royalty almost, and he's obviously the mastermind. Unlike the other two, who has more superhuman physical traits, he has superhuman mental traits. Pretty much they all were sent to. They essentially was caught. David didn't bother to fight through them because he doesn't want to hurt anybody, because he was probably going to have to, and he didn't want to do it. So they end up capturing them and locking them up in the psychiatric ward, where Dr. Stable plans taking 3 days to treat these people to convince them they're not superhuman. Her specialty is treating people who think they're superheroes or supervillains kind of scenario in Elijah's case. A lot of people complain about like Elijah is not technically a superhero, and technically not Kevin, because he's more of a villain. But I equate Elijah to like Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is technically not a superpower being, but he is a super villain by technical means, because his vast knowledge allows him to do extraordinary things, just like Elijah. So I mean, it's probably just, I don't know, I would put it as like bad wording, because on Dr. Staples' part, he's saying like treating people who think they're superheroes. Maybe there's this bad wording. They should probably say super beings. It'd probably be more of an apt word for that. But then uh, uh, they each got their own particular kind of cell. David's cell, has like water hoses, around the room. So in case he's trying to break out, the water hoses turn on, and douses him with water. Was it? What happens was just once because he doesn't try to fight much, but he he was told like, well, we understand you think water is your weakness, so we put these around here just to keep you subdued. Then for the horde, they string up these like light fixtures by the door, because the inner light of the horde, and they pass it around. Whomever gets is the one who's the dominant one of the at the moment. You get to see like James McAvoy strut his stuff in this. Hedwig is funny as hell. Like, I love Hedwig, and he's just like, I think he's a lot of people's favorite. I don't know, but it's just like it's nice to see like at least a handful of other new ones that James McAvoy get to play with. So you get to see Hedwig flip the camera off and everything like that, but then because the light is pretty much like a weakness, it's kind of like make sure it triggers every time he's tried to it's set off by distance and cameras. So like depending on where he's coming from, no matter where he's coming from, technically it flashes, forcing him to, especially if he's trying to go to the beast, being like any aggression, they turn on, switches to a less threatening personality. So Hedwig is pretty much primary one who's responsible for holding the light, unless specified not to by Patricia, who's like the matriarchy of the horde. But she's the only one who's more so gung ho about getting the beast out there to start this revolution. Throughout their experience dealing with Dr. Staple, a lot of the personalities are starting to waver in their belief in the beast, and you see Dennis more specifically, usually just trying to follow Patricia's lead, but you get to see him like just like kind of like the whole events. This becomes a little more taxing to him even. But you get to see like Hedwig trying to jump, trying to catch the light or whatever, and then the strobe lights flash on, and you get to see him like one of my favorites. It's like just like you only see him once, but it's like this professor of filmography or film history or whatever, more specifically Japanese from 1950s to 1970s. And it's like I just love that portrayals like like, oh, know what I'm doing here? I'm stuck here in this goddamn prison cell. And then he's trying to switch. He switches to a Hedwig again, and who's trying to go with the light, flashes on. And he changes into this like, I don't know if it's like this probably like an old Spanish lady. He speaks perfect Spanish. And then like he switches back to Hedwig, try to catch the light, and then Dr. State was like, okay, hey, stop, that's enough. And then of course she just Dr. Stable, you get to see like Paulson start her stuff, talking with like these personalities, trying to understand them, because she's gathered all the notes from the doctor who was treating Kevin in the movie Split, even like the note she left behind talking about like speak his full name just to bring out the real Kevin. But you also get to find out that Elijah is staying here too, and he's pretty much drugged up, seemingly drugged up, to be incapacitated because of his precarious mind. You know, he because his mother usually come visit him like once a week, you know, for the most part, and it was discussed by her that, you know, or at least her and Dr. Stable discussed a moment where they first brought him in, because of his mind. He's able to, you know, saw the blueprints, was just sitting aside for somewhere just for a moment, and to be able to, you know, turn off all the lights in the hospital kind of scenario. So it's like, you know, they had to, you know, keep him sedated to avoid him from using his mind to try to escape or do any serious harm, which obviously did not work, because we'll later find out that he's been hoarding all the medicine by sleight of hand, you know, been pretending for the most part to being drugged out when he's out at night, you know, going through files and everything like that. I love the scenes when, like, Dr. Stable speaking with, you know, Elijah's mom, David's son, and when he's trying to like convince her that he's not the overseer, he's like, you know, pretending he's want to feel like he want to do something out there, and you know, she obviously doesn't believe him. And of course, she asks him about his mother, and we find out that the mother passed away. I'm pretty sure it was like from cancer or something like that, in the somewhere between like Unbreakable up to the point of this movie. It's been like some years, because she passed away when Joseph was still young, so it probably wasn't too far off after the events of Unbreakable. And then eventually Casey comes by when she finds out eventually that the beast was locked away. She works in at the zoo, the same zoo that she was held captive at. She, you know, has been adopted by a new family, surrounded by a lot of kids. She's happy now, thanks to the events. She was able to like, you know, stand up to her uncle, get him locked up from what he did. She convinced Dr. Stable to let her speak with Kevin. And then, you know, the scene with like Hedwig, like, no way, you come back, we try to kill you, you come back, you're weird. That's like, bravo, man. And it's like you believe, like, it's great acting on his part, but you believe you're dealing with different personalities, you're not talking with the same person. It's like, I just love it. Schools outside, they set off fireworks right now. It's the day before 4th of July, but they've been setting off fireworks all throughout the week beforehand. So eventually I'm going to pull on my little ring light in a minute. But anyway, she wants Hedwig to switch over to either Patricia or Dennis to talk with them. Dennis switches over. You know, you see like the body language is just like, you know, different now. So he obviously he's like flexing his muscles a little bit, leaning back, talking like this. You know, like your clothes are neat. That's good. So it's like, you know, James McAvoy flexing his muscles a bit, just showing like a little bit more buffer. Then Casey's trying to convince him that, like, the Horde has to give up the light so Kevin can reclaim his body. And of course, like, you know, Dan is still at this point following whatever Patricia says. Patricia's obviously the, you know, leader of this group to full on convinced that the beast is the way, you know, to go. As soon as like Casey leans up to touch Dennis's arm, it triggers back as well. Even much prodding on her part. It forces the real Kevin to come out, and for like a minute or two, they was able to have like a real conversation, and it surprising Dr. Staple. And then like obviously there's like connection between these two after being through so much for the split time they had. Then he's telling like, I gotta go, and then he switches back to Hedwig, and it's like, do you like Kevin now? It's like, nice way to that's like it's a perfect way to end like a particular scene, just like on like a after like a somber scene, you end it with something like it was funny to me. I enjoyed it. But Stable, after Casey's leaving out the building, she's trying to convince Casey like, you're the key to this. It's like a real true love, something that he's been denied from his own mother. The truest form of it is the only way to like bring him out of this state that put him in there after the lack of it. Asking like, will you help me? And then like Casey just doesn't say nothing, just like turns away. I was always a little uncertain about that choice. Is like, knowing that she can obviously do it. I don't know if because like she cares enough. She doesn't want to feel like she's hurting the other personalities, aside from maybe like the Beast. She like knows. I don't know. It's like she found some kind of kinship and understanding with him, with all of them. She doesn't like maybe feel like wants to hurt the rest of them either. Maybe that's why she didn't bother to like agree to stay to cause I don't know, it feels like maybe it's like feels less real, as she feeling like she's like placating to somebody else's needs, and just like it'll feel what's the word, false in a way. It's like false sentimentality if she would have like stayed and tried to like just be around them just to get Kevin to pull out. Next thing you get to see throughout the movie, you get to see like new cameras being set up, more so because they want to make sure to keep a watchful eye on the whole entire situation. More so for Eliza, because she's still not convinced that the whole. I mean, I don't know if she was convinced that the drugs were kicking in, because she did mention in a later scene that she doesn't prefer it this way. That's not how like I do things kind of situation. But she obviously doesn't trust Elijah, so she want to make sure she's monitoring at all times. But then you got another great scene where she got all three of them in a particular room, and you get to see like all these different colors, like kind of clashing. You got the green, the yellow, the purple, and the white, like very distinct colors. And Dr. Stable each going to them about like why what they're doing isn't superhuman. It's just like she's telling David all his little super senses, or at least like his extrasensory spider sense. I was gonna call it spider sense. Essentially, is what it is not being drawn by mystical means. It's just like no different from what you'll see from like illusionists or mentalists or magicians, who can read people just by a slightest facial cues or body movement. And oh, and then she shows him like an MRI of his brain scan, and this is tripped a lot of people up when they saw this. Is where it's like you seen where he's been after in the beginning of Unbreakable, after the train crash, and he's like being monitored by the doctor. They all mention that wouldn't, like, because she says like the MRI shows like there's little cloudiness area. This could be where like you get like some kind of internal injury that wasn't uh, treated, and a lot of people mention, and I kind of see where they coming from, is that wouldn't that have been brought to his attention when he was checked up on after the train crash? Because he was being monitored by a doctor. Maybe he didn't do a full scan, but that's probably sort of something that would have been done. So it would have make any sense to like bring this up now. But David is like trying to let her know, it's like you're connecting events that has no basis, or at least you're forcing events to come together that's not together. Then she goes to Hedwig / Patricia, who's forced over after Hedwig, and then she's trying to explain to her that after the events are split, when they mentioned that she and her team combed through the Horde's little base of operations where they used to live at the zoo, and there was like a lot of stuff about rock climbing, like videos and what have you, and she mentions like maybe you created an altar that wanted to have this skill, and you forced that kind of beast persona onto it, but it's no different from any rock climber. There's nothing superhuman about it. And then Patricia retaliates like, oh, what about the boss? That wasn't in her head. How do you explain the boss? And Staple comes at her, well, like, I was able to use like a crowbar or a pipe or something like that, and lean back and force the bars to bend open, because the bars in a lot of those bars down there at the zoo has been around since like in the 1700s. They're very old, and can easily be bent. It's a little difficult, but it's doable. And then Patricia said, what about like he was shot? What about the shotgun rounds? He was shot. I was like, we studied the pellets and the bullets, the shotgun. It's been like in a locker around a lot of moisture, which degraded certain components inside the shotgun. And most of those pellets hit the bars too, so it's quite possible that you just managed to got lucky and survived. And of course, all of this was like wavering not only Patricia, but a lot of people's like faith in the beast. Later on, you get to see these after this little interaction. Elijah sneaks off in the dead of night to meet up with the Horde in their room, and Patricia wakes up knowing like, oh, so someone has been pretending, and mentions like he's able to get around because the night, the one of the wards who monitors and looks after the patients overnight usually comes in with a kind of like a beat down car that as soon as he before like is officially like cuts off and he parks, it lets off like a backfire, which gives Elijah the signal to come out of his room and to start like going through files and all other stuff, because not only that, he overheard complaints about him taking too long to get to his desk because he's a bit of a talker. You see him talking at least like a good few minutes with one of the security guys up in the front door. So they give him usually enough time, like 5 minutes at the most, to like do what he wants to do and head back to his room without being seen. Which, now I'm thinking about it, we're setting up all those cameras. They never had cameras installed. Like, when hospitals, you have, even like maybe like psych wards. I've never been to a psych ward before. Like if you got like a hospital in general, why would you need to have like cameras installed when it should have been already there? Unless they've been upgraded, maybe. But it's like, I don't know how long he's probably been there for, obviously like a decade at this point. As according to like a few points made into the movie, it's been at least a decade since the events of Unbreakable. So he's been into this hospital for about that long. So maybe they made some updates, in this point in the movie. But prior to that, you mean it hasn't been like any cameras? That part was weird. But when he's talking to Patricia, letting her know that he specializes in superhero and comic books, and he wants to meet the Beast. And Patricia sobbing, telling him like, "What if he's just unwell? Like maybe it is all in her head." Then Elijah telling her that, hey, you know, in comics, it's going to be people who can try to explain away the extraordinary, but and yet is real. Some people don't die by bullets. There's people out there can still bend steel. It's not all overly dramatic like you see in cartoons, like you mentioned. It's still the real world, but they can do things, like that pushes that line beyond the extraordinary, beyond the ordinary into the extraordinary. Super strength and vulnerability, maybe some amount of extra speed, that kind of thing, like a tougher skin, to deal with blows, or even an extraordinary mind like Elijah's. So Patricia agrees that they would allow him to meet the Beast the next night if they can he can get them out of here. So the next day, Elijah plans to escape. Oh, before that, I forgot one of my favorite parts of the movie. One of the orderlies, the one who was like, takes too long to get to his desk, I'm not sure if he was like supposed to insinuate that he might be gay or something, but not Patricia, but it's like another personality. It's like I don't know if sure it was Patricia or not. It didn't act like Patricia. Probably like another female personality on the floor, like all acting all seductive to him. Like, can you hand me that? It's way over there by the light, and I can't reach it. And then let me get a good look at you. Oh, you're a tall one. And it's like he just smiling, looking at her like he's interested. It's like I don't know. It's hard for me to judge at that moment. It's like there's nothing wrong with it, but there's still like a patient, and that's just like a personality that you're talking to. So like, why would you even be interested, or at least placating to this, woman? But then obviously he quickly realized it was a trick just to get him to block the light. So when it flashes, they trying to steal his key card so they can escape. But then he forces, the horse's head to look at the light, and flashes to, I guess, twins who share in the same body. It's like, I'm Mary Reynolds. Like, he could have killed you, you gobshite. You can get a little hard on. Huh? And it's like, please calm down. So he flashes the light on them. It's like, and then you get to see another personality. It's like, I am so amped. Almost got you, bro. Some just dude, bro. And it's like, he flashes like, and then you get here like a couple of more personalities, and it's just like a funny moment to me. I thought it was really good. I think this is the part where I clapped at the fact that you get allowed like James McAvoy, it's kind of riffing, but it's just like him just rolodexing through just different personalities, you know, and it's like at least a handful of throwaway personalities that show up and throughout this film, and it's like just fun to see because in the Split movie you don't see a lot of the personalities. You got like Hedwig, Dennis, Patricia, Barry, Kevin. There's one moment in like I mentioned in my Split review that Casey found with a couple of videos of like recordings different personalities had done. One who was a diabetic and another looked like some kind of intellectual. But you don't get to see like him really strut his stuff. So you get this movie where I haven't counted, but I don't think it was like a full 24 personalities if you include the Beast. But like I don't know. I gotta look it up because I'm pretty sure, James managed to complete like the 24. Because I don't think it was 24. It doesn't seem like it went up that high. But you get to see them putting like different, like, a bunch of toothbrushes in his room to use. Obviously, one for each personality, but they all the same colors. Like how they can be able to differentiate between whose toothbrushes is whose, whatever. But anyway, that was my favorite part. That is my favorite part in the entire movie. I love that part. But then the next day, the orderly who always late to his desk comes and check on Elijah after the events of him getting like it's supposed to be some kind of like a scan where they kind of like lobotomize him, or at least like not like electroshock therapy, but something similar where he will remain a little bit more docile. But he obviously sabotaged it a lot earlier. So that way he won't be lobotomized. So when he comes to check on Elijah gets up and like use like a jagged piece of glass to cut his throat so he can escape. And then goes to the Horde's room and mess around with a light trying to get to Hedwig. He's the only one who can move that. He's the only one in charge of moving the light towards the Beast because he's like the one who has been told by Patricia to hold on to that. Don't know why Patricia can't be the one who to deal with that, but you get to see like more personalities. One being like talking about a particular painting. It's like he's kind of sounds like some kind of college professor making a lecture, and then Elijah briefly chimes in like, the sublime blah blah blah, represents this and the other, depicted by the colors. Paintings of particular interest to me, and then that was a nice little scene, like just it's nice to see like certain personalities bounce off of the actors, whereas like Elijah can easily have like a nice intellectual conversation with this particular personality given their shared interest in certain historical paintings. But then they finally get to Hedwig, and Hedwig, Miss Patricia said that if I tap on you, your bones break usually. Is that true? And he's like, yeah. Like, and you think we're all superheroes? That's my superpower. You're not forever. You get to see the world the way it really is. Like, are you ready to show the world? Yeah. Like, yeah. Oh, then they go to a different room where Hedwig changes after he dances a little bit, changes into the Beast. And then a nice scene where it's like James McAvoy's Beast, where it's like, my Horde is losing faith. And then And then Elijah attempted to calm it down. Hey, Carlos, what's up, man? And it's like, in the comics, uh, uh, the hero gets to go show the world, like goes to a place celebrating man's. Hey, Daniel, celebrating man's pedestrian achievements. You'll go to this building, this new building being made here, the tallest building in the city, where all eyes will be on you guys. So you get to show the world and the horde the not only the beast is real, but the extraordinary of people with abilities in general. You will fight David there essentially, and that's where is where people will think where the big showdown will be. But I like this part where they undercut it because that's technically not where it's gonna be. It's gonna be right here because it goes to show that Elijah somehow orchestrated, or at least got stable to think because he's a mastermind. Think that they need to install all these cameras all around the building, inside and out, where they eventually get to see, at least because they eventually got into the security room where Elijah hacked into it, so that way the cameras feed the live stream of David, who Elijah eventually let out to convince him you gotta stop him and the beast before they go to that building and blow it up. So David breaks out after Elijah turns off the water, got his poncho, and meets up outside where the beast is when he's attacking people, like the security people. When you see him lift the car up and topples it, and then of course before that you got Joseph, Elijah's mom, and Casey meeting up at the exact same time. They are all convinced of the extraordinary because after what they've seen and witnessed, they are firm believers of the extraordinary. Yeah, David, like I mentioned earlier, yeah, not the entire third act was weak. It's just that one particular part that I had ire with more so than anything. But because we'll get to that in just a second. But I like the part when it's like the beast changes and he does that kind of like a panther run, just get on all fours and just charges at David, and it's and David's mom mentions this is where the big showdown will happen, and it's you get to see these two fight, and it's awesome fight. It's very low scale Avenger stuff, but it's still fun and entertaining, and I enjoy the hell out of it. But Casey's trying to, because Dr. Sable called in some tactical people to come subdue these guys, but Casey's trying to convince them to he's got DID, he doesn't know what he's doing, and don't hurt him. The horde or the beast is just tearing through people like nothing. After they try to subdue them, obviously they don't match for David because he's got super strength and he's trying to protect everybody. And eventually Casey, well, before that, Elijah's trying to tell the beast his weakness is water. If you put him in that tanker over there, he's weak and you can finally defeat him. And then Joseph jumps in the middle of them and says no, he's lying to you. David's Kevin's father didn't go on just any train and never came back. He went on the same train as my dad. He died, and it was Elijah's fault because he caused that train incident, that derailment. And Elijah didn't even bother to lie. It's don't tell him yet. And then Elijah's just, I don't know if he was pleading his case or just letting them understand what are the odds of Kevin's father, going on that same train as David. Extraordinary. I make superheroes. If Kevin's father didn't go on that train, he wouldn't have been left alone with his mother who was abusing him. And therefore the beast wouldn't have been created. And then of course, like, for a minute, like, the beast mentions, like, I thank you for what you did, but you hurt Kevin. And then of course he breaks Eliza's shoulder without that much effort, but given his super strength, he's probably like in crumbles now. And then he rams his fist into his Eliza's stomach. Pretty much he's dead at this point. And of course they trying to finish. He knocks. The beast went after David again, knocks him into the tanker that was controlling the water that's feeding into David's cell, and for a split second, like, David's like, kind of like out of it, and as the beast trying to run towards the after to the tallest building to show his grand entrance, Casey steps in, gets Kevin to come out, and then a shot fires, into Kevin in his weakened state, because the horde can easily, tank bullets very easily. In Kevin's form, he got shot in the gut. He's falling, bleeding, dying, and then one of the security guys drowns, David into a puddle. While, like, before, Dr. Staples counsel allows him to touch her, as he sees the images of who she really is, who's part of like some kind of secret organization, kind of like a Hydra / Shield organization, who's been around for millennia, suppressing a lot of superpowered people throughout the millennia, because the organization wants order, essentially, just to. They cannot have like superpowered beings, or at least like having like established super beings in a real world, because that'll threaten the balance in their eyes. Whereas, like, if there's extraordinary people in the world, that will make the rest of us, it has to be an even playing field. Otherwise, there's disorder among in the world, and they can't have that. They've been suppressing that. But this is the part where it's like I, with a lot of people, had eye with. It wasn't the fact that they died. That would have been like, nobody probably wouldn't have any problem with them dying, considering this is like the final installment of the Unbreakable universe. But it's the way they died is what I have, like, a lot of people have grievance with, because I didn't want any kind of big climactic Avengers Endgame kind of level thing or nothing like that, but someone like David deserved better. I mean, I don't know what they could have done, but not that. That was like, you drop him in a puddle when he got super strength and the rest of his body is out. He can easily push them off. I mean, if they was near a lake and they, while he's like, disoriented, they can easily drag him into the lake and hold him down, then that would have been a different story. And then I was like, yeah, like his whole body is submerged, so he cannot fight back. But his face is in the puddle. That is really pathetic. I don't know about, and it's like, Kevin's death, I don't know, because like technically I don't have any kind of issue with that, because like, yeah, in any other personality besides the Beast, he's technically in a weakened state. He cannot. It's not like the Hulk where, like, when you shoot at, you shoot at Bruce Banner, the Hulk will immediately change and heal him. So it is not the same way. It would have been cool if that was the case, but you know, the beast is weak when he's in a different personality. So, that part wasn't, uh, a big of an issue with me. But yeah, so all three are dead, which devastates all three. Uh, and I'm surprised that, well, they probably in control of the cops, but I'm surprised that nobody bothered to, like, especially Joseph, tried to go to, like, certain people saying, like, hey, or like hire government officials or somebody. I don't know how deep. Obviously, they've been around for millennia, so like maybe their influence run deep. But it's like it's amazing none of them was able to like go to somebody to deal with them who practically, especially if it's being live streamed, that seeing like somebody drown somebody in a puddle, and how the super strong hero died. Yeah, drown in a puddle. That is just like I said, if there was like a lake nearby, uh, uh, the facility, and there was close by, and the security forces dragged a disoriented David towards that lake and held his whole body down there, then yeah, that would make sense for him to die that way because he can't fight back. He has only his face in the puddle. The rest of his body, he can easily like push them, trip them up, just get up. I mean, it's like, I don't know. That part was very, very piss poor of a decision. I don't know what M. Night Shyamalan was thinking with that decision. I don't know how anybody did not raise their hand after they saw this and say, why this decision? I don't even know if he ever even explained himself as to why they chose that decision to kill off David. But it's kind of like the way Joel from The Last of Us. It's like the piss poor way of dying is just like they could have chose a whole different scenario that make a lot more sense, that seems more palatable for a lot of people. But anyway, as later on getting towards the end of the third act, after the events where the three main characters died, Dr. Staple, after overhearing a conversation from some comic book people in like a comic book store, which I don't know why she would ever go to a comic book store, given her predilection of keeping like superpower people a secret, an affinity to make sure everybody remains human. She would go there, but she overhears the conversation of these two people talking about how like the way evil masterminds work, and then she come to realize he went back to the hospital and at the security room realizes that the entire cameras that she had installed was being live streamed into like an unknown server where Elijah had it, sent towards his mother, Joseph, and Casey. I don't know how he got. Well, he's super smart, but I was wondering, like how did he know about? Well, he did go through a lot of files of Kevin, which obviously would have her information, being the only survivor of his serial killings. He can easily find her like email address, but he sent the live footage to them, pretty much to do whatever they wish at that point because he's dead. He's kind of hoping that they do what they eventually did, which post the fight between David and Kevin and their extraordinary abilities towards the on the internet, which you see a lot of people in this because they're in like a train station or like a Union station, something like that, where everybody's like going on their phones, is being streamed on the news about like people with like abilities, climbing walls, lifting cars, and bending steel and all that other stuff, and that's where the movie ends. And I still enjoyed this movie. I watched all three of these movies in the double digits because I really enjoyed this. Probably one of the only three Shyamalan movies that I thoroughly love. But I kind of wish there was like a comic or somebody do like a fans made movie about like what happens afterwards. Like, will there be more people showing up with their own extraordinary abilities? Like, I don't know, somebody who's able to not maybe like kind of like turn invisible or something like that. Like, be able to have like his or her body being translucent and be able to camouflage. It doesn't have to be like, because in the Unbreakable universe, they don't need to be like Cyclops with like laser beam eyes or anything like that. But it's like, certain traits like this could be feasible. Like, I don't know, maybe at least super speed at the most. Uh, and like, I want to see like what occurred, because a lot of people who reviewed this like years ago when this movie came out, that uh people who see this footage, there are gonna be a lot of people who's gonna like try to debunk this, like, oh, this is, this could easily be fake news and blah blah blah. Even before the term fake news was even a thing, they can easily say, oh, this is fake. It's like, there's no way this is possible. But does it say like everybody just bought it? And like there's people coming out of the woodwork showing off their abilities on TikTok or something like that, and showing people with other people's super strength, or some people who able to like climb walls or even levitate a little bit. I just want to see something like that, or at least somebody make a comic of that. At the very least, it's like set in the Unbreakable universe, and see like people, and then like this secret organization, and see what they have to do now. And like probably being mad at Stable because she let this happen, and see like, oh, what transpired with all that. That would have been like a very interesting comic book. I will definitely read that comic book. But yeah, God, I love all three of these movies. I get a kick out of watching them. Like I said, I've watched these in the double digits. They're extremely fun. Like a fun watch, a very nice layered interpretation. Like at least a nice, like if you studying this in film school or studies class or something like that, there's a nice little breakdown or deconstruction of the superhero mythos or comics that kind of like permeated the pop culture over these decades since the 40s, or the 40s, since Superman came out in like the first Action Comics comic book, because Superman was, like I mentioned in my video that I made about why I love Superman. You can watch that on my YouTube channel too. That's why I love Superman. It's like he was the first, and like, well, I already mentioned in that video how like I really had like a issue with people wanting, because since the Injustice game, everybody want to do like evil version of Superman, blah blah blah. It's like, the point being is that he's like supposed to be a Boy Scout, and people always find that boring. It's like, why do you get off being like pushing your cynicism on somebody who doesn't fit that bill? Like inherently, he's supposed to be the best of us, and like it's not like Superman hasn't dealt with like loss or anything like that, which does affect him, but he doesn't turn into like a fascist. It's like he managed to rise above it, because I remember Grant Morrison, mentioned in like an article that, because I'm pretty sure it was Grant Morrison, because he mentioned about how like he lost his parents at a young age, and didn't make him become like a a-hole. He rolls above it and try to like just make sure that he lives up to their name, and move on as best as possible. And that's what something like, if something he could do, Superman can easily have done. And it's like that's what I seen the first 2 seasons of The Boys. I'm not much of a fan. Great storytelling, sure, and the writing's good and everything like that. But it's just like, I'm done with the whole cynical superhero crap. I'm done with that. Like I'm tired. I don't want to see that anymore. It's like, I think we should leave that kind of crap during the whole last 4 years of crap we was being dealt with, especially in 2020. Leave that back. Let's move forward in like a more hopeful future. I want my hopeful superheroes. You don't have to be naive or anything like that, or all goody two shoes and everything's hunky dory. you can still tell like a realistic, serious narrative of a story, but they gotta have some hope in there, like for the future, and like they remain true to their character as a whole. It's like I don't want to see like any more Homelanders or Omni-Mans in a world where like there's like fuck the world, superheroes hopeful, go cry to your mommy, fuck that, bad. Like no, I want my hopeful superheroes. Okay, like I'm starting to read Static Shock. That Static Shock is a perfect example. If you ever watched the cartoon, which I'm going to eventually do like a review of at some point down the line, probably should write that down. That is a perfect example of like when you watch the first 2 episodes of Static Shock. They tell like a real story, but you got like Static still remaining, hopeful as a character and jokey and like always do the right thing. And it's like that's what I want to see in superheroes. But like I'm digressing. But yeah, I'm feeling this movie. Like it's not perfect, obviously. Like that third act was like really weird of a decision making, and especially people complain about how like after the events of it's been 10 years since Unbreakable up until this point, where like when Glass was coming out and like this is around the time Infinity War came out at the time, so like it was enough time for Shyamalan to absorb a lot of the how superheroes have grown in cinema, where he could have like done something with that in Glass, since he have more, because like when Unbreakable came out, superhero movies had like a bad rep. Now things had there's been a sea change, and I'm not sure if he took that to heart or not, but it just wasn't. It doesn't feel like it was represented into the film, which I really wish he, try to did something with it, especially with the Glass character, who, feels like that, or at least truly believes that like the superheroes have not only real, that reaching out, and he wants to pull it out into the light, and how easily people are wanting to believe the extraordinary, and there's people out there who wants to suppress the extraordinary, and he could have done something with it, but it's obvious he did not. But despite that, and despite the that minor infraction of the third act, everything else I thoroughly enjoyed. I love the Dr. Staple and her interaction with all 3 of these characters, and like those 3 characters interacting with each other, and then their close knit family or friend that they have, that they remain anchored to their humanity. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed all 3 of these movies, but not sure about next week. But at some point, I will be reviewing the Horrible Bosses films and making like a review of those. I love those films too. It's funny as hell. I'm gonna try to see if I can get the director's cut. I'm probably gonna have to watch it on Amazon Prime, but I want to check and see if there's like a director's cut. I want to see like, not director's cut, like our the unrated cut. That's the word. I want to see that. But yeah. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think about Glass and the Unbreakable universe. How would you rank them? What's your pros and cons of the franchise? All that stuff. I'll see you guys in a little bit with my Jackie Chan Adventure Season 3 review. I'll be posting that in a few minutes. So take care, everybody, and I'll see you guys soon.